Off the top of your head, can you ref off what the ten tonalities are? I didn't know there are 10 now. Now I'm like curious.
Yeah, no. So certainty. Yeah, let's start with certainty, scarcity. You have the reasonable man, or you have utter sincerity, right? You have phrasing it declarative like a question. You have the I really want to know tonality. You have hypothetical tonality. Well, how many is that?
Or 7.
Yeah, there's 10 of them all together. Let's see, reasonable man, utter sincerity, whatever. You can look them up on my
Go
website.
buy the book. Yeah. Ask ChatGPT.
Let me give you an example, by the way. So when I close, I would say to you, Bill, you give me one shot, and believe me, you're going to be very, very impressed. Sound fair enough? So that's 3 tonalities in one. It's absolute certainty into utter sincerity into the reasonable man. Sound fair enough? I'm reasonable. There's something called implied obviousness. That's number 8, by the way. I'll get there eventually. Yeah. The truth is, I've been so busy with like other companies. I haven't even been really focusing on it that much. But they're a tenant and they're really powerful. When you use them the right way, it's like, it makes it much easier to close. It really does, incredibly.
I love books. I love stuff. Then I started diving into everything you're doing. And I don't know when you'd come out with Straight Line Persuasion course, but I found it, bought it, got a copy of it, started listening to it. Most of our people coming through are building funnels, but they're also like doing one-to-many selling. So webinars, challenges, things like that. And there's a million different things I teach them, but there's one thing that you taught your phone sales guys that I thought was interesting, that it's very applicable to people who are speaking other ways. And it's, you went deep into tonality, which I wouldn't even know how to go for more than like 20 seconds teaching tonality, but I think there's like an hour-long DVD or something of you just going deep into that. Would you explain the tonality and how that works on the phone? And then we can kind of liken that to how people can use that when they're speaking in other situations, All
right. Well, it also works tonality on paper. In other words, when you're writing copy in a funnel, there's tonality there, and it's based on punctuation and pacing and ellipses and highlighting something or using an italices. You could put tonality, and that's what I learned to do when I wrote, is creating language patterns and punctuating things in a certain way, even misspelling certain words, creating tonality on paper. Tonality is like this, is really the secret weapon of influence. And what happens is that, there are different ways that we communicate, right? One is the words that we say, right? This is basic NLP stuff. I'm sure you studied it, right? Another is body language, right? And then there's tonality, the way in which you say things. Now, on the phone, body language collapses into tonality. They can't really see you, but based on how you sound, they'll make a mental image of you. Like, for example, there are some people like myself, naturally, I have perfect tonality. I was born that way. And I'm not the only person. There's many people that have perfect tonality when it comes to sales, because there's tonality in regular communication, like you're talking to a friend or telling a story. Then there's what I call goal-oriented communication, meaning there's a specific outcome in mind. You're trying to persuade someone, you're trying to achieve a goal, right? So when you're dealing with goal-oriented communication, the rules change somewhat. And the first thing is that you want to be perceived a certain way. I always say sharp as a tack, enthusiastic as hell, and an expert in your field. You want to be perceived that way. Why? Because what it chunks up to is people will say you're a person worth listening to because you can help them achieve their goals. We want to seek out experts to help us achieve our goals, solve our problems, with conditions since we're yay big, right? So the $1 million question is, well, how long do you have? You have 4 seconds. It's instant. It's an unconscious reaction, a gut reaction, right? So if you have 4 seconds to do it, how? That's the $1 million question. Is it through the words you say? Well, think, what could you say in 4 seconds? Hey, I'm sharp as a tack. I swear, I'm an expert. People are like, what the right? There is no words, right? Now, you could say the wrong words. Hi, I'm a moron. Nice to meet you. But it doesn't come with the words, right? The way you do it is through tonality. And when you're in person, and body language. Well, let's talk about tonality on the phone, right? So let me give you a quick example. So you're a salesperson, you're on the telephone, right? And you say to someone, you're cold calling, or even not just cold, but you're calling back a lead that you have that answered an ad on Facebook. Say, hi, this is Jordan Belfort calling from XYZ company in New York. How are you today? I would never do that. By the time you're halfway through, they're like, oh my God, another salesman called me. Why the hell did I freaking do this? Who the hell is this freaking Jordan Belfort? Oh my, and they already hate you. But what I would say, hey, Jordan Belfort calling from XYZ company in New York. How you doing? They're like, who, what? I'm phrasing things that are declaratives, but I'm stating them like they're questions. So when you say, hey, is Jordan Belfort? You're like, who? Wait, do I know Jordan Belfort? Wait, I'm supposed to. And my mother told me when I was 5 that I'm not supposed to forget people's names. And all of a sudden, it's like they start to process, try to keep up with the inference of the tonality. I say from XYZ company, they're like, do I know XYZ company? By phrasing it as a question, you send their mind into search mode. And then you're like, in New York? They're like, do I, in New York? What do I do? They say, how you doing today? Now, I don't say, how are you today? How are you today means, you know that I know that you know. I don't give a shit how you're doing today. It's a perfunctory greeting that humans give each other. How you doing today? Screw you, right? But I say, how you doing today? And they're like, whoa, he really wants to know. And they're like, okay. I'm like, great. Now, if you recall, you filled out a form, and I lower my voice and I imply scarcity of information. So what's happening is every time you apply a tonality, the person who's listening hears extra words that are but you're not saying the words, but they're hearing. Like I said, how you doing today? He's saying, wow, he really wants to know. They hear those words. They process those words unconsciously. When I say, hey, it's Jordan Belfort, they're like, what? Who do I know Jordan Belfort? So what happens is, instead of them narrating against you, like when you speak to someone, you're listening and you're saying, what is this guy? Who is this idiot? Either they're narrating against you, their own internal monologue, or your tonality is so rich that they're just trying to keep up and figure out all the extra words they're hearing. In those first 5 seconds, if you do this right, they'll be like, oh, good, I'm doing good. They're so confused. It's like, you know what the spinning wheel of death is in a computer, right? When you overload the RAM of a computer, the random access memory, the wheel starts to spin. It can't process anymore. What's happening is the human mind, the brain, has got two parts. It's the conscious mind and unconscious mind. Conscious mind is what you're focusing on. It has very limited processing power. You can only see so much. The rest gets deleted and goes to your unconscious mind, which is based on patterns of behavior, all the patterns that we know. We know what experts are supposed to look like and sound like, and we know what they don't sound like and look like, right? So what happens is, when I start layering on all these tonalities throughout an entire presentation, I'm always switching and layering on. What's happening is I'm in control of their unconscious, their monologue, and the spinning wheel of death, they're overloaded with extra words. So what happens, it defaults to their unconscious mind, and I hit a pattern that says, wow, this guy sounds like an expert. I'm supposed to let experts control the conversation because I defer to experts because they can help me solve my problems. So by sounding like an expert and by hitting that pattern and overwhelming their ability to understand all the layered tonalities, you're instantly taking control of a conversation. Okay. And that's the first step of straight line communication, is take immediate control of the conversation, right? And the way you do it is through the use of tonality in certain words. And then once you do that, you don't use that control to talk. You start asking questions, and you ask questions in certain tonalities. I'm not going to say, so how much you owe on your credit cards? They'll say, screw you. Say, so how much do you owe on your credit cards, right? Like every question has got its own best tonality. So as you move through a sales presentation, right, you're applying, there are 10 core tonalities. You're applying them as strategic points in the sale. And when you do it right, it just sounds amazing. You're like, people listening, they're, wow, that guy sounds good. Wow, he's an expert. That's why Leo sounded so good when he was pitching on the phone in The Wolf of Wall Street. I taught him how to sound amazing on the phone. Those were certain tonalities he was using, and he was speeding up, slowing down, all this sort of stuff, right? And here's the thing, you say, wow, this is really complicated. No, it's not. It's the easiest thing to learn, because here's the deal. Every human being has used all 10 of these tonalities at some point in their life. They just used them when they really felt that way. Like when you really felt empathetic and you felt sincere and I'm really sorry. We've all used that. We've all been absolutely certain about something. I'm so certain. We possess the ability. But the question is, do you apply them at the right time for goal-oriented communication? Once you start learning how to do it and rewire your brain, it all opens up the spigot and your brain starts to do it automatically. So it's one of the easier things I teach people, and it's incredibly powerful.